SAUGA 960.
We're back with more on News Talk SAUGA 960, the Mark Patrone Show. Always a great pleasure having David Crayden on the show. And David, by the way, is a fantastic singer. I'm just going to leave it at that. He's done some lounge singing. And if you ever see or hear that he's playing somewhere, you need to check it out. How's that for a plug?
That's marvelous, Mark. Thank you.
Let's talk a little bit about, because you were a spokesperson for the Department of National Defense, and we've seen with cuts now the ongoing degradation of Canada's once proud national military services. We're hearing that people in the military are so broke now they're having to sleep in their cars. Let's listen to this testimony now, this account of one such person, that it is actually happening.
Inflation is so bad in Canada that active current members of our Canadian Armed Forces cannot afford the cost of living and are having to come to you for help.
That is correct. And I can also tell you that we have active, currently serving members of the Canadian Armed Forces living in cars.
This is Debbie Lowther, by the way. The Veterans Emergency Transition Services.
Housing crisis is such that we have, over the past year, seen 3 veterans who have been posted to areas where they cannot afford housing and are living in their cars. So getting ready for work in the morning, putting their uniform on, and going to work in Canadian Armed Forces. So, yes, that is, in fact, very real.
Wow. What do you think?
That's incredible. When I was in uniform talking about the cost of living, we used to say people were going to food banks. Some of the lower ranks had to go to food banks. And of course, that was a shame. And that was a shameful on the government. To think that military members are sleeping in their cars, and it doesn't seem implausible to me, because we post our military members to some of the most expensive places in Canada, like Victoria for one, Ottawa for another. Halifax is very expensive. Everybody's not going to Cold Lake, Alberta, where the rents are cheap, are cheaper. Excuse me. But the problem, of course, is that military families always expected to be able to buy a house when you got to a certain promotion level, and that has become a forgotten dream. That's become a lost dream along with so many other Canadians. But it drives me nuts, Mark, when I hear about these stories, because I think we have to go an extra mile for veterans. For people who put on a uniform, they don't have a union. I mean, when I was in uniform, I worked 7 days a week, 24 hours a day at times, not always, but I was on call. And if there was a search and rescue operation in Comox, where I was based for most of my career, I would be off for sometimes 5-6 days at a stretch. And I'd be answering calls at 11 o'clock at night. And the SAR techs, the search and rescue technicians, of course, who jumped from aircraft, who dove into the sea, the rescue people, they got the same wage as everybody else at their rank level. They got a bit of danger pay, but not much more. So if those people have to live in Victoria and pay their rent there, yeah, it's very hard. But any country, I think, should be judged by how it treats its veterans and how it treats its military. Because these are people who go the extra mile for your country. These are people who put their lives on the line for your country. They're not like most other people doing most other occupations. And I think the country needs to go an extra mile for veterans and for serving members. And this is absolutely shameful to hear that we have military members sleeping in their cars. Because that's usually something people who are down and out are forced to do. And my God help us if military members in uniform are living like people who are down and out.
And now we've seen reduction in the overall amount of money that the military has to play with. So you can only assume that things are going to get worse. David Crayden joining us. He's a writer. He is a podcaster or a YouTuber. He's got a terrific YouTube channel. How can people access your YouTube channel?
Well, it's Crayden's Right. You can also get me at Substack at www.davidcrayden.substack. I do a lot of work there. We're linked into our YouTube page. My show, which I'm doing about every day now, is Stand on Guard. I do a live question period show if I can, if I'm not doing something else, I'll do question period live, and I like to say I offer insightful and witty analysis. Emphasis on the witty, because it really becomes a conundrum to watch question period and not be utterly devastated at the state of our democracy. So you have to infuse some humor into it. That's what I try to do. So I invite people to watch that. It's every day at 2:15. Like I say, if I'm not covering something else, I'll do that live, and I'll do shows as many as possible, because I really believe this country is in trouble, and it's independent news that is taking up the slack. I don't want to anticipate your next question, but I don't know if you noticed yesterday, Mark, in the fall economic update, the Liberals are giving more money to the legacy media, paying journalists' salaries. And that's something I wanted to touch on, because I'm sure it's close to your heart as well. In most countries, this is called buying off the media, or ensuring the media gives you a favorable audience because you're paying for it.
Oh, absolutely.
Liberals have been doing.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah,
you run with that. They're going to be spending, I think, is it over $200 million, something like that. I'm going to go back and find that number. But it is an astonishing amount of money to throw at reporters. This is the ongoing process of propping up a dying media, which, ironically, in the process of getting money from government, becomes less accountable and less receptive to what the people want, which is the truth. And so this is terrible news. But I don't think too many of those reporters out there who are getting paid, essentially as civil servants now, are going to be complaining. They'll take a paycheck wherever it comes from, David.
Yeah, they will. But policy-wise, this is not noxious and it's toxic. And it's not something any democracy should do. But it's par for the course for the Trudeau government. I think this is absolutely repugnant that we're doing this. And given the fact that as I've said, and I say, anyone who will listen, there's more censorship coming from this Liberal government. The Online Safety Act, it's around the corner. It's going to be devastating for independent media, for new media, and for legacy media. It's going to hit them in the butt too, even though they're failing completely to report on it. I was over at the Senate yesterday covering a protest, and I had a chance to talk to my old friend, Senator Pamela Wallin, one of the few people in the Senate I really have a lot of respect for. She was a fantastic journalist, and she continues to work hard for Canada, unlike a lot of people in that chamber. And I talked to her about the Online Safety Act, and I said, I'm on the air every day talking about this coming bill. And she said to me, you're right. It's going to be worse than C11 and C18, and it's coming soon. And she said, get on the air and start fighting this, and don't stop. Keep fighting this bill, because it's going to be devastating to Canada and Canadians and to journalists. And that's the first person I have talked to outside of yourself and a few other people who were informed of what this Liberal government is doing, who's actually said, yes, this is one of the greatest dangers facing Canada right now. And the Censorship Act, the censorship bill is coming. It's going to be absolutely catastrophic, and we need to fight it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it works out to, in terms of this subsidy, $30,000 per newsroom employee. And the laughable part of this is that the government is touting it as a protection for the quote unquote independent media. So they're fostering dependency. We've got wards of the state now in terms of mainstream media. And this subsidy, this latest subsidy, is being touted as a way to ensure a strong and independent press can continue to thrive. Wow. I mean, we are truly in the realm of the Orwellian when you start hearing talk like that. Let's make the media as dependent on government as possible in order to protect their independence. I mean, that is exactly what Orwell was talking about, isn't it? I mean, at the end of the day.
Yeah, well, took the words right out of my mouth. So we're living in the age of newspeak here, because nothing is as they describe it. This is not developing or safeguarding independent media. It's creating a dependent press, dependent media on the Liberal government. Just like their censorship bills are not creating any kind of safety or online streaming freedom or anything like that. They're restricting freedom. They're the exact opposite. They're censorship bills, and the Liberal government will call them anything but.
Yeah.
But that's exactly how they approach every issue, isn't it? It's like they're saying the carbon tax is putting money in your pocket. I mean, I don't know I don't know how many times I've heard Jonathan Wilkinson, especially, that's his favorite script. It's in front of him every day in question period. He claims 8 out of 10 Canadians are getting more money back in the carbon tax rebate than they're spending on the carbon tax. This is a flagrant lie. This is absolute nonsense. This is, and he keeps repeating the lie every day. And anybody with half a wit to rub together can tell you that they're spending more money on the carbon tax than they're ever getting back. I've never got a cent back in any kind of carbon tax rebate. I don't know anybody who has. But you're telling us 80% of Canadians are getting more money back. Nice try. I mean, and I don't even believe the inflation rate anymore. I tell you, because why my coffee beans have doubled in price in the last 3 months, and they're telling me our inflation rate is 3.1% a month. I don't believe it.
No, I don't believe it either.
They're cooking the numbers. They are cooking the numbers because we are living in a state of inflation that's approaching a crisis. And to get back to the original observation here about military members living in their cars, well, we're all going to be living in our cars because we can't afford rent and we can't afford interest rates on a mortgage because people are struggling just to live. It's a hand-to-mouth existence. And I saw a recent Angus Reid poll this week saying that finally the reality is sinking in amongst most Canadians. Number one issue that they're concerned about, 73% of Canadians are worried about day-to-day existence, the cost of living.
Yeah.
29% of Canadians are worried about climate change. I think that number is inflated because I'll tell you, I don't know anybody who goes to bed at night and starts fretting about their carbon footprint. I don't know anybody who's worried about climate change, but I can tell you, I know a lot of people, including myself, who are worried about whether we can pay the mortgage or whether we can afford the groceries this week or whether we can put gas in our car. I know a lot of people in that boat, but I don't know anybody who goes to bed worrying about climate change.
And to your point, on Twitter, you posted something about the government looking at doing an end run around the government, going straight to the UN in order to push its single-use plastic ban. They got a ruling from the courts that said it was, basically quashed it. And so not being content with that, they want to go to the UN. And so that's a stunner and an eye-opener because it shows really who these people are. They're not working for the Canadian people, that's for sure.
Well, it's stunning because nobody except a few people on social media, but none of the media reported that comment made by Guilbeault on Monday at a nationally covered news conference. He was there to talk about a number of issues. He talked about banning ivory imports from Africa. Yes, that's very good. He talked about he was going to challenge the federal court's decision on the plastics. Then he started saying, but we have another option. We're going to go to the United Nations, which they've already done, by the way, and we're going to have a treaty, a UN treaty banning all single-use plastics. So what he's saying is we're going to overrule our own federal court. We're going to overrule Canadian law with globalist law. We're going to ask the United Nations to make the law for us. So we already know the World Health Organization wants us to sign over all of our rights for the next pandemic so they can make decisions for us. We already know Trudeau is in the pocket of the World Economic Forum. We already know Stephen Guilbeault, the Environment and Climate Change Minister, is a proud socialist and actually a Marxist and is also in the pocket of globalists. So what does that tell you? People are always saying, don't sprout conspiracy theories about the WEF and the UN and globalism. They do it well enough themselves because Trudeau has talked repeatedly about the Great Reset, about resetting things through crises, through pandemics, through disasters. And this is another opportunity because they don't like a court decision. They're going to go to the United Nations to overturn that. And that to me is ominous because these people do not serve Canada. They serve a foreign master.
Absolutely true. And getting paid handsomely to do it. I mean, let's face facts here. Look at what they're doing. Look at the actions they've taken, the policies, the fact that they have parroted the same talking points that so many of their globalist buddies in Europe and elsewhere have been saying, these people don't work for us. And the sooner Canadians figure that out, the better. David, once again, how do people access your YouTube channel?
We're at KRAYDEN'S, right? It's a Crayden''S, right? It's on YouTube, and the show is Stand on Guard. And I invite you to watch. And as I say, tune in this afternoon at 2:15. I'll be doing a live from Parliament Hill question period, and I try to make some sense out of this nonsense that goes on there.
Fantastic. David Krayden. Let's take a break. Back with more on News Talk, SAUGA 960, the Mark Patrone Show, after this.